Hello, everyone, and welcome to WHU Inside Business. Reporting to you from Siena, Italy, in our virtual studio, I'm Nicholas Peterson. Joining me today from Berlin is Victoria Engelhardt.
Hello.
Victoria completed her studies at the University of Mannheim. Subsequently, she gained employment at two highly successful startup businesses, Rocket Internet and Epic. She then went on to become a management consultant in the healthcare sector at Boston Consulting Group. In 2017, she built and co-founded Keleya, a next-generation pregnancy service provider that offers a platform with 360-degree insights. So without further ado, Victoria, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for the nice introduction.
Thank you for joining us. Before we get started, I would like to ask you to give us a little introduction to who and what is Keleya. Who are you?
Sure, and happy to. So let me first start with who are we helping with Keleya. It's pretty much we are helping to have pregnant women, but also parents to experience a safe and also relaxed pregnancy, but also birth experience and parenthood. And how we are doing this is by, first of all, providing them with a really best-in-class pregnancy app that supports them with premium content, but also a complete digital birth preparation course. Also recently one just exclusively for the partner, but also for the woman. And we provide her with completely personalized content, for example, workouts completely catered to your special needs. For example, when you have back pain, you get different workouts than when you're like completely feeling amazing. And on the other side, nutrition plans and expert knowledge. And just recently, we also launched a complete platform to kind of help you find a midwife just with a couple of clicks. And on top of that, we just recently launched our whole post-birth products, so also supporting the women after they deliver the baby. So yeah, I hope that's a quick intro of what we are doing, but maybe about this later.
Yeah, in fact, you know, I, of course, have to address the elephant in the room these days, which is the coronavirus. And, you know, relating to what you guys do and what your mission is, of course, with Corona, we've seen in Germany this causing hospitals to restrict births to only the mother, where the husband or wife or partner is not able to join. And this has put a big, you know, a different meaning and a big emphasis on what it is to be a midwife. You know, that coupled with the growing popularity of home births, I wonder how this trend, you know, how do you see this trend and how is this affecting what you guys do at Keleya?
It's a very good point you're bringing up, and also actually gives me some goosebumps when I'm thinking about the first lockdown in March, April, because that was really a horrible time for every pregnant mother, because as you pointed out correctly, they were not even allowed to bring in the husbands. So first of all, I think it also had an impact on our product because we had even more use cases. There was really women that reached out to us and said, thanks to you, I wasn't having a complete terrible pregnancy. And I actually took my app with her to the labor room, and they listened to the podcasts and to the breathing exercises. So that was really something where we could help. But overall, I think they have kind of rode back from those very stupid decisions in the beginning. And I think as far as I'm hearing now, everyone is still allowed to at least bring the partner to the room. Because I mean, you cannot imagine how much stress and craziness this puts on the woman when she's giving a birth, and you cannot just not have the partner with her. And so I think that's good that they decided to at least allow this again. But maybe there's other countries where this is not allowed, and also the case that you're not allowed to stay as a partner in the first days after the delivery is just really horrible. And you pointed out the point that women are more doing the home births. And yes, that is something that happened, especially in the first lockdown. And I think it's it's good for women that have a very healthy pregnancy and that have checked with a midwife or with a gynecologist beforehand. Then it's really not a problem and they can do it. The big issue is, first of all, there's only few midwives, it's less than 500 in Germany, that are experienced enough to do a home birth at home. And on the other side, there's a lot of women where a home delivery is just not suited and where it's really, really risky and risky for the mother as well as the baby. So I'm highly encouraging everyone to beforehand check and not just deliver at home. That's really crazy. But we've seen this happening. So it's great that you're pointing it out and that you have heard of it.
Yeah, it's definitely a growing topic. I know, in Germany, but also back in my home country, the US, and it's very interesting to see how the COVID, pandemic has really changed things with regarding to pregnancy. To move into more of a business aspect, I'd like to hear a little bit more of how you founded Keleya, and specifically in finding this specific niche subject and adapting it over the years since it was founded in 2017. So many entrepreneurs, they'll fail either because their solution does not actually solve a real problem, or because they do not have the right skills or experience to bring that idea to life. With Keleya, you have successfully targeted a serious issue in Germany and the world, and you come to the table with the relevant experience. How did you decide to tackle this issue of a shortage of midwives and a shortage of pregnancy support for women?
Great question, because I don't have kids myself yet. So the reason I did this and how we started with the whole topic was a very good friend of mine. She became pregnant. And for the first time, I was closely to this topic and I realized, oh my God, how the world is changing. So she was really overwhelmed. She didn't know what to eat. She didn't know what sort of sports she can do. She couldn't find a birth preparation course, neither could she find some pregnancy yoga because everything was booked up already. Because as you said, there is really a shortage of services along all kind of dimensions. And I was just really interested because personal well-being and health has always been a topic that has fascinated me. And I've always seen that if you feel healthy, everything else falls into places. But if you kind of neglect your health, nothing else is gonna matter. So that's why I realized it's a topic worth solving. It's a topic that a lot of women have, like a problem. And I'm also very passionate about solving this issue.
Building on that, how did your experience working in the healthcare sector, as a consultant, how did this influence your ability to found Keleya and to be a successful entrepreneur as you are?
Good question. So to be honest, before BCG, I mean, I was working in the startup scene. So I was obviously having a lot of experience with how does it look like when you're starting a business? How do different departments work together? How can you be a good or a rather bad CEO? But I haven't had any touch points with digital health. And when I went to BCG, I mean, as you pointed out correctly, I had some projects also with DAX 30 pharma companies. However, that's very, very far away from what we are doing now. So it gave me maybe a tiny glimpse of what is necessary to know. But I mean, pharma companies are very different from digital health companies. So I think overall, I learned like rather a very general skill set for how to build a business, but the very specific and industry specific knowledge I have now and had to learn was something I had to learn on the job.
I think, and you kind of answered the second question that I had there, which was how then did you bring your idea of Keleya to fruition? How did you build it? So if it wasn't really the experience from BCG, I assume then there was a lot of self-teaching and self-learning throughout the process. How did what were the main steps you took to build your startup?
I think the very first and most important step was really listening to our customers. And that's something you don't need any experience with. Everyone, even when you're 15, can start building a product when you're just listening to the potential users of this product. And if you understand them and how they are potentially solving a problem with your solution, then you're already on a very good way. And I mean, then everything else you have to learn, like in my case, I mean, we didn't start with the solution that we have right now. We started with a very generic kind of Runtastic or Asana Rebel for pregnancy. So just workouts, just nutrition plans. The whole notion around digital health and CE certification and also reimbursement of health insurances just happened later, and by pivoting and adapting to the market. And so how did I kind of come up with this and how did I learn this? To be honest, on the job. So I was really like talking to other founders in the segment. I was going to conferences and then honestly just learning by doing. I mean, 1.5 years ago, I had zero contacts with health insurers. So, and no network, nothing. And I just had to kind of by trial and error, find a way how it works.
You know, my follow-up to this was going to be, you know, how did Keleya need to pivot and adapt since, you know, its founding to fit its spot in the market and where it is now? And could you maybe elaborate on some specific ways in which you pivoted and maybe ways you started out that were not, you know, that ended up not being the right approach, and how you adapted?
Sure. I mean, as I said, we started really rather as a just workout and nutrition app. And there was a couple of reasons why this was not the best idea. First of all, the market was just too kind of specific and not big enough. It was a niche and a niche. So it was very tough to find money. I think it still would have been a very good product, but it's just impossible to get VC funding for that. So we had to make it bigger. We had to show that the potential customer lifetime value would be much bigger than what we expected initially. So that's how we kind of integrated more functionality and services. But then also on the other side, when we listened to the customers, there was just like necessities we didn't do in the beginning. So for them, a pregnancy app always had to kind of include some generic information on how big is my baby at the moment? How is my body developing, and what do I have to know? And that's pieces we had to put into the app in order to be recognized as a pregnancy app and companion. So that's not really a pivot, but at least some adaptation to the market. And then what we also realized is if we kind of want to not just address the kind of peer group in Prenzlauer Berg, Berlin that is willing to pay for the service, we have to find another way. And that's how we started with the whole notion around reimbursement of health insurances. And that really took a long while. And that's also why we had to launch the whole birth preparation course, because that's a product that already exists in the market, where there is already a reimbursement scheme, because it's usually a service provided by midwives. And then maybe the last point I can mention here is, maybe that's an interesting one. When we started a couple of years ago, we realized that finding a midwife is a huge problem. But when we did a problem solution analysis, we realized that women are not willing to pay money for it. So it wasn't worth solving right in the beginning because we couldn't have made money with it. But however, we then partnered up with the Midwife Association. And since this whole partnership and cooperation offers us a complete new kind of strategic approach, it now made complete sense to solve this problem, even though we are solving it still for free. So yeah.
No, I
hope imagine it was not too confusing.
No, I can imagine how complicated it is to deal with, you know, these pre-existing networks, the Midwives Association, and also insurance. Yeah, it must be a lot of points to connect.
Yes.
You mentioned that, you know, listening to customers was really the one beacon that allowed you to pivot and to change and to build the product that you now have. What are the methods that you use to listen to customers? How did you get their feedback?
Cool question. And I mean, that's how we are still doing it. Very different ways. So, I mean, the very first one was to really talk to them personally. So really at the beginning, we stand in front of a supermarket and we're approaching women that look pregnant. I already mentioned this, and another one can also be tricky because sometimes they are not pregnant. No, but we also obviously do surveys with our existing user base. So we send out surveys. We also reach out on our networks such as Instagram and Facebook to ask for feedback or to ask for women that are willing to do a user test with us. And so we really sit down, do a 30-minute Zoom video and go through the app or ask generic questions. So I think that's the key ways of how we deal with this.
Got it. Okay, so now that you have your product built up, you have a large user base. Now what are the methods of listening to customer feedback now versus at the start? Of course, you're not standing in front of supermarkets anymore, but yeah, how has that changed? And looking forward, how will it change, do you think?
I think it hasn't changed so much as you probably would expect. The only difference is that we are having a much larger user group that we can tap into already. So by just sending out an email and asking for people that are willing to talk to us on the phone or via video conference, we already receive enough feedback. In the previous days, we had to rely on our personal network, ask friends if they can refer to us, other friends. So it's a bit more automized and easier to access these women. But the way we do it then is just still the same. The last piece I've completely forgot is obviously we do also data analysis of the user behavior in the app. And that's something we didn't have in the beginning. And I highly encourage everyone to put in place right from the start.
Okay. And actually, can you elaborate on that point a little bit? What insights do you derive from this, and how how would have you done it earlier? If you say you would have liked to have done it at the start, but would it have been possible to do it back then? And
so, I mean, what we are using is the typical app analytics tracking. So we are using Amplitude, very typical tool used by many app developers. And I wish we had implemented this right from the beginning. And that's really not something you cannot do. It's even for free in the beginning if you have a very small user base. It's just going to take some days to develop and to integrate the deep links. But I think it's worth it because then you can kind of combine the qualitative analysis based on your user research with the quantitative user analysis from Amplitude data. And so what we are using it for example, is obviously realizing if a new onboarding funnel is performing better than an old one, or also checking which kind of features inside the app are the most used or which are the ones that aren't used as much. And obviously you can always kind of check your hypothesis with it and also see whether the things you've realized in the interviews also are matching with the data.
okay, good, thank you. Yeah, this is leads perfectly into the next topic I wanted to get into, which is the idea of digitalization and how things are changing now, and especially now with COVID, how things are rapidly changing in the direction of digitalization. Of course, Keleya, even in the beginning, was always built as a digital platform, and I would like to quote for you in just a few weeks ago, I think actually 2 weeks ago, at the Young European Innovators Conference took place in Graz, and of course, virtually. At the conference, Ursula von der Leyen said, 2020 will be remembered as the year of lockdowns and confinements, but there lies a chance in every crisis. 2020 has showcased the power of digital technology. I guess first question is, do you agree with her?
Yeah, actually very much. I totally agree with what she's saying.
I would, yeah, I would like to see, how this pandemic and the acceleration that we've seen of digital technologies, how this has affected you and kind of the overall lay of the land when it comes to digital startups like yours.
I think, like, First of all, on a very generic way,
Mhm.
I can say that obviously digital health providers have benefited overall from the pandemic. So I think everyone has kind of realized that we are needed and we are offering a very valid kind of alternative. So that being said, one of the very kind of craziest achievements that we've had and the craziest impact due to the pandemic was before COVID-19 happened in Germany, there was just 2 health insurance companies that worked with us. Now, and I mean, that's just like 8 months later, we are having more than 18 partners that reimburse our product or even exclusively work with us together. And I think that is crazy. If you had told me a year ago, I would have said maybe we find 3-4 partners that are willing to work with us. So I think it really accelerated the willingness to innovate along health insurances. And I mean, they're really not known for being super innovative and digital theme. So I think that's the biggest point I can show you.
And you would attribute much of this to the pandemic versus what would have happened naturally if the pandemic had not hit?
Yeah, I think it just really accelerated the speed.
Mm.
It's not that we wouldn't have had partners otherwise.
Okay.
It's just they realized, oh my God, women are completely left alone. I just give you a number from 2 health insurance partners that I talked to. The percentage of women that are using a birth preparation course or a post-birth recovery course, which is Rückbildung in German, has decreased by 30 to 50%. And it doesn't sound important, but not participating in such a course has a lot of long-term downsides, from increased risks during birth, but also increased risks of pelvic floor problems, incontinence, and so on. And I mean, 50% reduction is crazy. So that shows that there is really a supply gap. And with a product such as Keleya, we are really like filling the gap and helping the women. So yeah.
I see. Okay, so these courses that would normally be taking place in person, okay, and now you're seeing this kind of be replaced, and why the growth is so enormous on your side is because they're being replaced with digital platforms and digital
Correct.
services like yours.
And also, I mean, the likelihood of a woman willing to go to the gynecologist just for a tiny question has decreased a lot. And since
Okay.
we are offering quite a lot of like first-hand information on why do you have heartburn or why do you have water retention, I think there's also a higher willingness to first maybe check answers online, and only in the case of real problems you're willing to go to the doctor, because obviously you want to reduce the contact points.
Yeah. And question on this, do you what are your thoughts on this bouncing back once the vaccine is distributed and we kind of have an end to this COVID era? Do you think some of this will stick, or do you think things will go back to the way they were?
I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle. I think there is, at least everyone has realized that actually video conferences work for meetings. So I think like every company realizes that home office more of a valid option. So I think it's the same for digital health platform providers. You can see it as a really good alternative. And I think there's still people that just rather prefer complete pure in person, and that's completely fine. And so I think it's just gonna go more hand in hand.
Well, video conferencing is definitely working for us. Although, one day we would love to have you back in our studio, which we have not been able to use yet on campus. But until then, I guess we have to deal with Zoom for now. But Victoria, I want to thank you so much for coming on and giving us your insights and a little bit of background on how you developed in the world of entrepreneurship. And yeah, I really look forward to the next time we get to speak. Thank you to all of our viewers and listeners out there. From all of us here at WHU Inside Business, thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for the great questions.